Welcome back to Art Fennell Reports. What an interesting discussion I'm having with Crystal Travis here about the world of surrogacy. She runs a company, surrogacy company, which she consults with people who are considering having a surrogate to carry their child for them, specifically in India, which is the road that you travel. But I want to get back to something that's important here that we shouldn't lose sight of. And let's say you at home, you may be considering this. This is a business. Make no mistake about that. As you say, there's no time for bonding and really getting to know the person because there's a language barrier. But this comes down to dollars and cents. You said that when you were first approached here in America, it was $125,000.
Yes.
In India, it was what, $35,000?
Well, when we had Mark in 2008, I think we paid $21,000.
21 versus 120. That's a $104,000 difference.
Right.
That is astronomical. And so, again, you're paying this money for it. You are buying a service.
Right.
And is it possible to bond with the surrogate? Is that something, you said that in your case it wasn't something that really was feasible because of the language and the distance and so forth. Is that something that you think the surrogates want, or they want to remain distant as well?
Make no mistake, the surrogates in India really are not trying to bond with intended parents. I think that a lot of intended parents that come from well-heeled countries, they really want that sort of platonic relationship. The culture is different, the education is different, and that's not the road you necessarily want to go down.
Right. Are they frowned upon in India for doing this?
In some cases, yes. In rural areas, a lot of the surrogates often are housed in surrogate housing, and they keep it hidden from their family. In other cases, it's not. Even though in Gujarat, it's a cottage industry, and for some of the women, their families frown upon it. But for other cases, many of the families do not, because the women, in most instances, are the breadwinners. So they're buying the homes, they're paying for education for their children, and that's why the vast majority of them become a surrogate.
Sure, and again, $21,000 that you paid in 2008, that's a great sum of money over there, and now it's up to as high as 35, maybe even higher.
Right.
Who knows? And so this is a huge sum of money that a person is able to use for their family.
Right, and the surrogate, they would get, like with Naina Patel, Dr. Patel, she gives her surrogates $7,500 for a singleton birth. If they have twins, then they get more. That's a huge amount. For them in India, that's like hitting the lottery. That's
like hitting the lottery, my goodness. And so, Crystal Travis, you decided, hey, look, you know what, I'm going to help people hit the lottery here in America so that they can benefit from your experience of what you personally had to go through with first your single birth and then your twins. You knew the ins and outs of the system. You knew the players abroad. You had traveled there. You had been on the ground. And so, da-da, here comes your company. Tell me about that.
Well, what happened was that when I first started, I would get referrals all the time from doctors, different doctors who knew our story. So what intended parents would contact at least 2 or 3 doctors that I did know in India, and they would ask if I would kind of help people kind of get through the process. Or people would hear about me through a friend, and they wanted to know what the process was like, or if I could contact the doctor and make arrangements. And it just started to get out of hand, where most of my day, or at least half of my day, was spent calling India, making arrangements for people. And a little birdie went off in my head one day, and I'm just like, I think I have a business here, so let me just incorporate.
Okay, you were quoted $125,000 when you were first were approached about doing this. Can you talk about your prices?
Sure. Well, my cost for facilitation is anywhere from $5,800 to $6,100. And then the doctors give me a package plan to give to the intended parents.
Right, but in terms of the intended parents, what will likely be the range of their bottom line if they decide that they want to go down this road?
If they want to hire a facilitator?
Yes, let's say they're going to hire a facilitator and they do want to have a surrogate in India, and, you know, from the beginning to the end, this is what we want to budget to try and pay for this?
Okay, it depends on what doctor you're going to use. If you're going to use Dr. Bashi in New Delhi, you're going to pay about 33,000, and on top of that 33,000, you add my facilitation fee.
Sure.
If you're,
Still under 50,000 though.
oh, it's totally under 50. It's you're looking at about 42,000, 40,000, no more than that.
No more than that. And how do you compare this to adoption? Because in an adoption, you go, there are newborns who, you know, the parents, the mother may have been on drugs, may have been from a depressed area, just didn't want the child for whatever reason, and you're able to get a child that way. In this case, you're paying for
Well,
out, and you're I guess, you know, again, it's your husband's sperm.
right.
But
This is, I think adoption versus surrogacy is apple and oranges. With surrogacy, obviously that child is your genetic child, or half of your genetic child. You don't have to worry about an open adoption because you're not adopting, it's your child. When we went down the adoption route, what we were told was that in this country, at least in the U.S., most of the time they want an open adoption. So you have to go through the whole process of having your home study and pretty much still being involved with the adoptive parents.
I'm sure your husband's extremely supportive in all of this, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But again, that was his sperm, and so when the children arrived, do you see any resemblance now that they're starting to develop and grow and get older? How old are they now, by the way?
Well, Mark is 3.5 and the twins are 16 months. I see a lot of resemblance. I see a lot of resemblance, not just in Colin, but I see some of the resemblance in his father with the boys.
And you say that with a big smile.
Yeah.
Because obviously that matters, doesn't it?
To me, it does matter. To me, it does matter. I'm glad that we did surrogacy instead of the adoption route.
Yeah.
Because at least we know we have some of the genetics.
Well, this has become very popular. Infertility is on the rise in the United States. We'd have to have another discussion to get to the reasons why that is, but particularly when celebrities get behind it. What's her name? Juliana Rancic and Bill Rancic from The Celebrity Apprentice, and she's the model. They're going this route. It's been very, very popular and very public with it. And we hear celebrities in the news all the time who are trailblazing these kinds of things. Who are your clients? Who are the kind of people you talk to about this?
Well, I do have some celebrities. I have clients who are doctors and lawyers. You know, I have clients from all walks of life. I have clients from the age of 26 to 66.
Wow.
So they run the gamut. So it's people for whatever reasons, either health reasons or because they're on a contract, and they'll be fired from their contract if they carry. Just people from all walks of life.
Well, at the very top, we talked about how this is, in America, this is not just necessarily something that says, oh, this is wonderful and beautiful, and why not have at it? There's a lot of legislation over this. How closely are you monitored through the process of running your company?
Well, I'm on top of all the legislation in India. India has been trying to regulate surrogacy for some time. I don't know if they will ever get to that point where it is legislated. In the U.S., you have a lot of different states where surrogacy is illegal, and there are a lot of states where it's not. It's not really an issue in the U.S. It's not really an issue in India.
Well, part of what comes into play in all of this, and again, this may be part of apples and oranges too, but there's the whole idea of gender selection, how you are putting in the codes because we want a boy. Or we want a girl. And I know that in countries like China and in India as well, and probably some other places, that's a real big deal in terms of the gender of the child. And people tend to frown on that when you try to tamper with the genetic code.
Art, you're right. When you walk into any IVF clinic in India, there is a sign when you walk in that we do not do gender selection. It is illegal in India to do that because there are more males than females in India. For obvious reasons, the males are able to get jobs and to take care of their families. So in India, females are often frowned upon.
And is this all done anonymously? Or obviously very, 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 very privately? When you get a call from a potential client, they say, look, this is something that we're interested in doing. We don't want any of our friends to know. We're not telling them we're whatever, whatever, whatever.
That's very, very common. A lot of people, they don't tell their families until they are back home with their child, or they feel that their families may be not happy that they're going to India to do it. A lot of people, for whatever reasons, are very secretive about it.
Sure. Well, you're happy. We know that, and hopefully you're prosperous with your company. We've seen your beautiful kids. With a little bit of time we have left, for those who are watching, that may be considering it, young couples, women, maybe thinking about doing this, just tell us what you see as the pros, what you see as the cons, things they should definitely consider.
The pros are that if you want to do surrogacy in India, if you want to start today, you can have a family in 10 months. The problem with it is that it's very hands-off. So you're at a great distance to have a surrogate half the world away, that you may only get pictures, or you'll get like some of the sonograms. So it's very hands-off versus doing surrogacy here. Doing surrogacy in the U.S. costs a whole lot more money. It's very difficult to find a gestational carrier. In most clinics, you're going to be on a 2-year wait to get someone, unless you have a friend or a family member who can do that for you.
Right, but be prepared to not be so attached through the process, because that's just the way it is.
Right, right. And at least the cost in India, the costs are nominal. So if you have a lot of negatives, at some point you will have a positive.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing. This is a personal story, and it's one that it was good to put some light on, and I thank you for coming to share it with.